Have you ever looked at the news and wondered how two countries could go from being super close allies to, well, mortal enemies? We're about to unpack the absolutely wild story of the US and Iran. It's a relationship that went from best friends to the brink of war, and trust me, it'll change the way you see the headlines. When we think about Iran today, especially in the West, this is the kind of stuff we hear, right? It's this constant drumbeat that they're a dangerous, hostile force. And the language just gets more intense from there. It's always about these huge existential threats, especially the whole nuclear issue. The message is pretty clear. Whatever you do, you cannot trust Iran. I mean, these are really powerful words, painting this picture of a super aggressive, radical state. And look, from a modern point of view, you can kind of see why that view exists. But it completely ignores a massive piece of the puzzle. Because here's the twist that just changes everything. The same America that now calls Iran a terrorist nation is the same country that once literally offered them the keys to the nuclear kingdom. So what on earth happened? How did we get here? Yeah, how did a really close friendship just completely fall apart and turn into decades of conflict? To get that, we've got to jump in the time machine and go all the way back to the end of World War II. You might not believe this, but back in the 50s and 60s, America and Iran were basically in the middle of a geopolitical love affair. It was this super tight alliance, and it was all built on two of the most powerful things in the 20th century. Okay, so after the war, the new rules of the global game were pretty simple. Rule number 1, oil is power. Rule number 2, a nuke is the ultimate insurance policy. Now, America and its allies, they had the bomb, but they didn't really have the oil. They knew exactly where to get it, though. The partnership was just perfect, a total win-win. Iran had the third biggest oil reserve on the planet and was this crucial piece of real estate right next to the Soviet Union. In return, America gave them cash, top-of-the-line weapons, and yep, even nuclear technology. The cultural connection was deep, too. Tehran was starting to look like an American city with U.S. movies and cars everywhere, and the leader of Iran, the Shah, was treated like a rock star in Washington. So on the surface, it looked like Iran was on the fast track to becoming a modern superpower. I mean, its economy was booming, but this was all a grand illusion, and the cracks were starting to show, and it all came to a head at one single, unbelievable event. And this created a nation of two totally different realities. You had the rich elite in Tehran living it up with new shopping malls and fashion shows, but for everybody else, life was getting really, really tough. Half the country didn't even have electricity. Inflation was out of control. There was widespread hunger. I mean, the average family was really struggling. And this feeling started to grow that this whole Western-style modernization was leaving them in the dust. This anger that was just simmering below the surface, this feeling of being left behind by their own leaders, it was about to explode. And the spark that lit the whole thing on fire was a party. So in 1971, the Shah decides to throw a party to celebrate 2,500 years of the Persian Empire. The price tag, when you adjust for inflation, an estimated $800 million. Just let that sink in for a second. $800 million. For a party. And the details of this thing are they're wild. We're talking kings, queens, presidents from all over the world. Get this. 18,000 kilos of food were flown in from Paris, 25,000 bottles of vintage wine. They even imported tons of ice on military planes just to keep the champagne cold. And to make it look nice, they flew in 15,000 trees to create a forest in the middle of the desert. But here's the part that matters most. While their own kids were going hungry, the people of Iran watched their leaders spend a fortune on a party that they were not only not invited to, but were forcefully kept away from. I mean, can you imagine how you would feel? You'd be absolutely furious. And that fury, it fueled a revolution. By 1979, all that anger just boiled over. The Iranian people, led by this guy Ayatollah Khomeini, they overthrew the Shah. And just like that, the relationship with America wasn't just broken, it was absolutely shattered into a million pieces. The moment he took power, Khomeini made 3 huge decisions that basically guaranteed America would become an enemy. First, he scrapped democracy and set up an Islamic Republic under Sharia law. Second, he openly cheered on the student takeover of the U.S. Embassy, where 52 Americans were held hostage for more than a year. And third, he kicked out all the American and British oil companies and nationalized the oil. That meant Iran's oil now belonged to Iran. not to some foreign corporation.
Well, America's response was swift and it was devastating. They immediately froze $12 billion of Iranian money. And then they backed Iran's neighbor and arch rival, Iraq, which was led by Saddam Hussein. The U.S. gave him money, weapons, and intelligence to invade Iran, kicking off a horrible 8-year war that killed 500,000 people and just wrecked both economies.
Now, from Iran's point of view, this was the ultimate betrayal. America had just crippled their economy and then paid their neighbor to attack them. This deep-seated fear and total lack of trust, it set the stage for the conflict that defines everything today, the nuclear standoff. I mean, try to put yourself in Iran's shoes after 2003. Their situation looks pretty terrifying. They've got U.S. troops in Iraq to their west and in Afghanistan to their east. The U.S. Navy is patrolling the Persian Gulf to their south. And their sworn enemy, Israel, has nukes. They felt totally surrounded, and they saw what happened to other leaders who defied the U.S. So they decided they needed the ultimate insurance policy. So in 1984, Iran fired its old nuclear program back up. For decades, the U.S. and its allies tried everything to stop it. Then, suddenly, a breakthrough. In 2015, they struck a deal to stop the nuclear work in exchange for lifting sanctions. It actually looked like peace was possible. But then, in 2018, the U.S. walked away from the deal and slammed all the sanctions back on. Iran's response? To hit the accelerator on its nuclear program, pushing it closer than ever to being able to build a bomb. And that brings us right up to today. This whole story is about a friendship that soured into this really painful, decades-long cycle of betrayal and revenge, and it's created two completely opposite ways of seeing the exact same world. This is really the heart of the entire conflict. The West looks at Iran and sees a dangerous rogue state trying to get its hands on the world's deadliest weapon. But Iran looks in the mirror and sees itself building an unbreakable shield against a superpower that betrayed them, funded a war against them, and has them surrounded. And all of that leaves us with one terrifying question. After all these decades of bad blood and paranoia, is there any trust left to build on? Or is this story of a broken friendship destined to end in a catastrophic conflict that could drag in the entire world? That's the question that's going to define the next few years, and it's one we all have a stake in.